Welcome back to the Questions About Life podcast. I am Brian Fleming.
And I'm Daniel Broome.
And on this podcast, we talk about, questions about life. Questions people have that maybe they don't know who to ask, or they often wonder about, but they're afraid to ask because they might get villainized by other people who maybe have different belief systems, or they're just questions that pop up to them, and they've yet to find some sort of resolution, and they don't know who to talk to or discuss it with, but they're looking for more information on it. And so, this all started because this stuff you and I talk about, in casual conversation whenever we hang out. And, today's episode, we want to talk about who should pay for your debt.
Yeah. And, we don't necessarily claim to have all the answers to the topics that we talk about, but we discuss them and we try to get a little bit closer to the truth. But yeah, that topic, who should pay for your debt, came up because today is August 25th, and it's yesterday that President Biden announced what is it called? The student loan forgiveness?
Loan cancellation, something.
Yeah, forgiveness or cancellation or something like that. So if you make under $125,000 a year, you can shave off $10,000 of your debt. If you make under $125,000 a year and also got a Pell Grant during the course of going to school, you can shave off $20,000.
Okay.
And then he also announced some other stuff too about service, government service, military service. I think nurses, police, firefighters are also a part of that. Government officials.
Okay.
If you have 10 years of combined service, there was something else. I don't know if it was another 10 grand off, or you don't have to pay the debt anymore. Not sure.
Okay.
But that's the reason that's our topic today. Is it's something recent that came up, and it's I guess sort of an ethics question. The question is, should you have to pay off your debt?
Yeah. Or should someone else have to pay off your debt? That's an even bigger ethics question.
Yeah.
I'm very old school when it comes to personal responsibility. I understand there's more than one way to look at this, and we're going to discuss that. My bottom line is, if I take out a loan, I'm on the hook to pay it back.
Yeah.
I can't take out like an $80,000 business loan, and then it tanked. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
And now, Daniel, you and the people in your neighborhood or in your city, you all have to pay higher taxes to now pay this off because I messed up or I didn't. There's nothing right about that to me. Zero, none. Now, I understand there's more than one way to look at this.
Yeah.
But just to be clear from the start, to me, there is absolutely zero. It's not my responsibility because you fucked up a big financial decision. And it's not your responsibility if I do it.
Yeah, and that's where it gets kind of complicated, right? Because like in that example, you took out an $80,000 business loan. The business didn't work out. You still owe the 80 grand. And so if the answer is everybody else has to pay back your 80 grand, I mean, what about the person that was going to start a business, had saw the option of taking out an $80,000 loan, decided against it because they weighed the pros and cons, they weighed the risks and rewards and said, you know what, this might tank. I might find myself in debt, not able to pay it, so I'm going to go ahead and pass on that. Now that person that made that decision is responsible for, in this example, your bad decision of taking out the $80,000 loan, right?
Yeah.
It's not Brian's actual decision.
Hypothetical.
But,
yeah. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't let you pay back my loan. There's no fucking way.
Yeah.
Like just with me, with how I think as a man, with any shred of integrity, I'm like, there's no way I'm putting you on the hook, Daniel, for anything taken away from your family to pay off a debt that I took on, and you might not even know me.
Right.
Now again, I know that seems vilifying, but we can't ignore this part either.
Yeah.
Because there's a bottom line to everything. And the reason this came up is because I was working out at the gym today. I looked up, and the headline said, basically, here I'll read it. It was on the TV there. Who will pay for student loan debt cancellation? And I got on Facebook, and I don't usually post on things like this, but I haven't been on like a month regularly. So I thought, I'll drop that little bomb in there and see what happens. And I basically put, how about the people who signed their name and agreed contractually that they would pay back the debt that they took out.
Yeah.
Basically. And I'm not being a smart ass with that. I'm being literal. I was being a little like, well, obviously, why wouldn't the person who took it out? But at the same time, it's like, to me, well, who else? To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to put it on, like, who else would, if I bought a $80,000 Mercedes, I'm like, dang, I can't make the payments. Well, they take it back from you. There's a consequence for that. And my bigger concern is if it's kind of like everybody gets a trophy, nobody gets one, or it doesn't matter. Like, if you start being there for people and they don't have to feel the sting of their bad decisions, and there's always a way out, those people continue making bad decisions. I remember the first time I financed a car in the military. We all did that probably. I owed something like 25 grand on it. Well, then I traded it in because, the car dealer guy said, hey, man, we'll pay off your existing loan and put you in this new car. Like, oh, hell yeah, you'll pay off my existing loan.
Yeah.
What he failed to mention to this 19-year-old idiot that I was is we're going to stack it on to the cost, the price of this brand new car. So now I basically owed $40,000 on a car worth 25 or 28, and the moment I drove it off the lot, it sank probably another $5,000 in value.
Yeah.
And I had to pay. Well, here's the thing. Because I got injured in Afghanistan, I came into some money. Long story, all legal, but I came into some big money, and as a result of that, and so it was TSGLI is what it's called. If you get severely wounded in combat, there's these like 25, 50, 75, or 100 grand. I got injured by a suicide bomber in Afghanistan. I qualified for, like, at the time, the 25 grand. So I paid that sucker off. I'm like, glad to be out from under that.
Yeah.
Within the year, I financed another car. Now I was under it again. And I had to dig my way out of that one, go earn money, and I paid it off. But I had to climb out of that hole. And I've never financed a car again since. Like, I've only paid cash. And so, like, even I did that. But it's because somebody was like, oh, we'll take care of that for you.
Yeah, I was in the car business for 6 years. I was a salesman. I was a internet
Went to the dark
sales
side.
manager. I was a finance manager, and eventually a sales manager at a dealership here. And yeah, that's a very common practice, man. My job is as a finance manager. The finance manager is basically, once you've agreed to buy the car with your salesperson, you go in and talk to the other guy in the office that does the paperwork. So I did that. I was that guy that did the paperwork. And, and our job in there is to, if you come in and you've agreed to a $350 a month payment, my job is to bump that up as high as possible. I'm going to try to get you to $550. I'm going to try to get you to $600 a month,
I'm not surprised, but
yeah.
wow,
and it's done, through selling extended warranty programs and gap insurance and all that stuff. But yeah, that's a racket, man. And that's a racket. And getting creative with those numbers is an art, and it can be misleading to the consumer, but it's also completely legal. And that's kind of like the student loan situation. There's an argument that could be made that these kids took out loans when they were 18, 17, 20, whatever. They were young, before their frontal lobe was fully formed. And they made a $100,000 decision, or however much your education costs. Might have been misled, conned, or promised, oh yeah, if you just do this, you're going to make $400,000 a year, which turned out not to be true.
Yeah, get this degree and you'll make something around $300K a year. Like, yeah, right. Like,
and it doesn't always work out that way. So, so I think that there is an argument to be made that, I agree with you that if you take out a loan, you should be the one that pays for it. At the same time, these kids, there's an argument to be made, these kids were taken advantage of. So then it's like, okay, well, we got to make that right. Well, it's the government that took advantage of them. Don't go to the government for the solution.
Never.
If
you need to win a war and you need a military to protect your family, like, go to the government. Other than that, yeah.
Yeah, and then at the same time, just kind of thinking through it out loud, is like, back to your question of, well, then should be responsible for it? Well, even though, maybe they were taken advantage of, it should still be you. It's like, I've been taken advantage of. I've been misled before. And I had to pay the consequences for it. And it was a learning lesson. I'm a better person because that happened to me. I'm a better person because I have had to take I've had to pay the consequences for those actions, for those mistakes. And I'm much more prone to avoid them again.
Yes.
As opposed to,
falling into the same old trap.
Right. If, everybody that's getting, I'm not denying that there are people struggling that were taken advantage of, financially struggling because they have this massive debt. I'm not denying that that's not a problem.
Yeah. And same here, even though I sound merciless. Yeah. I'm just looking at bare facts, but yeah.
Yeah, but
I agree.
At the same time, back to your point, is like, well, who should pay for it? Well, it's still you. It's still the person that took out the loan. You were taken advantage of. Yeah, you were misled. Yeah, you're struggling in debt. But it's also you that it happened to.
Well, and here's a big problem I have. Like, if I'm going to hire you, or if I'm going to work with you, or go into business with you, my big thing is, you took out debt and you had someone else pay for it. Like, you didn't take responsibility and cover it yourself. Yeah. Well, now I wonder, if something goes wrong as we're working together, are you going to try to throw me under the bus or try to get me to, pay for it, or you're going to blame me, or you're going to try to weasel your way out at my expense?
Sure.
Because there is a lack of integrity. Integrity being a mathematical term, it comes from integer, wholeness. There's a lack of integrity there because there are holes in it. Now, if someone decides to, I'm philanthropic or whatever, and I want to pay off these 10, students' debts, that's fine. I mean, if there's stuff like that and someone chooses to.
Sure.
But yeah, to mandate that, because think about this. You own rental real estate. You own several real estate, rent residential real estate. So, homes people live in, they pay you rent. You're a landlord.
Yeah.
If you went to the bank, you got a loan for let's say $450,000. Around here, that's a typical house. And then 3 or 4 months in, 6 months in, something tanked where you're in dire straits financially now.
Yeah.
And the bank's collecting, or they're coming after you for whatever reason. It would be, who's responsible to take care of that?
Yeah, it's me.
And now this is an old expression. Do you have to take a bite of that shit sandwich? Maybe, right?
Yeah, it's definitely me.
And if it wasn't you, who else would it be? And with integrity, who else could it possibly be?
Yeah,
because somebody told you, hey, you invest in real estate. It's a great deal, man. You make all kinds of money. You don't work. It's just you just make all this money every month. You don't have to do anything, and so you hopped in. And then something went south.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you because there's, and I'll explain it this way. There are a bunch of anti-landlord groups, people that, and I don't have any hate towards these groups. I'm a landlord, but it's fine if you hate landlords. But
I guess you can just buy your own house and you don't have to deal with one. Exactly. If it's that bad, go fix it.
Exactly. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So there's these anti-landlord groups, and I follow them, because I always like looking at both sides of any topic, and I'm in there, honestly reading some of these posts because I want to know if I'm wrong about how I feel. I'm pro landlord, obviously, because I'm a landlord, but one of the big themes in there, kind of the jokes is, you're a landlord. Go get a real job. You're leeching off of all of our landlord. We're going to work. We're making the money, and then we're sending it to the landlord, right? And
do you like to have a place to live? If you don't, then go to a place where there's not one.
Yeah, and the landlord, in their eyes, does nothing. It's just a leech. So when you were talking about the situation where things go to hell and the bank's collecting and I'm in financial trouble and everything else, that's definitely a possibility. That could happen, especially with poor planning.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a risk you assume when you take on that loan.
Exactly.
to get that property. Or it's the same you would with any loan, including an education one.
Right. And so in the context of the anti-landlord folks that are like, get a real job, you don't really do anything, you're a leech. Well, in addition to a bunch of work that's actually is involved, a big part of it is I've taken on the risk.
And the liability.
I'm the one that's taking on the loans. I'm the one that's maintaining the property. If something breaks, I have to fix it.
Fences,
The liability.
landscaping. If the foundation breaks, you got to pay for that.
Right.
Or water floods everywhere. Roofing.
Right.
AC units go out. HVAC.
Yeah.
That's not the tenant.
That's
all on you.
Yeah, and I'm taking on a lot of risk. It's with the millions of dollars of debt, and everything that comes along with it. So, yeah, and in that situation, if that were to ever happen, which it could, maybe I haven't planned properly, or maybe something happens out of my control. In that scenario, I wouldn't have anywhere to turn. It's me.
Yeah.
If I ask the bank, well, are there any programs? Can we talk to President Biden about this? They're going to laugh at me. No.
You can't take that to the bank. Yeah.
No, dude, you got to pay for that.
Yeah.
I got to pay for that. So, yeah, that was a good example, man. That was one that's kind of close to home. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, well, and it comes down to decisions. Like, people can complain, well, you're a landlord, you don't do anything. Well, that's not true, number one. But number two, earlier on in life, you made different decisions than other people. You did not own all the properties you own at one point. You got out of the military as a Army Infantry Paratrooper, worked jobs, didn't own real estate at all, and eventually had a house. Then you rented it out, got another house, rented, or there's some process like that.
Yeah.
You made choices with your money that other people did not.
Yeah, I didn't inherit any money.
Oh, you didn't inherit it, yeah. And even if you did, so what?
I don't remember getting any extra money for being white. I didn't have any white privilege from it. Yeah, just like you said, I worked my butt off. I made good financial decisions, saved my money, my wife and I lived in a like $450 square foot apartment for 5 years with low rent, even though we could afford much more because we were stacking cash to do it.
But you could have went out and bought 2 brand new BMWs and been like, you both drive these beautiful cars you love. You're paying $900 a month or $1,000 a month in car payments because you want to feel good, look good, you want people to think you're doing well, or whatever reason. Nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, if that's your choice, but you made different choices that have led you to a better and different outcome than a lot of people who would complain, well, you don't do any work. It's like, yeah, well, you're not very responsible with money.
Yeah.
I mean, some people even make more money than you and I, but they're more broke than we are. They're just broke at a higher level.
Yeah.
Like, I have more cash on hand than people who make more money than me because they've got that yacht to pay for, or the boat, or the 2 boats. They've got, the 3 BMWs and the 4-car garage and the house that's like, every month they're like redlining. If they miss like 1 or 2 paychecks, they're done.
Yeah,
they're demolished financially. But, man, they live in that $800,000 house, and it's all looking good.
They look successful.
Yeah, but they could have taken so much of that money over the past 5 years and, like, put that into real estate or something that would make... my whole point is, like, they made different money... You have made different money decisions than other people. And obviously, you've made better ones than a lot of people. Now, you've had screw-ups, too, and so have I. I mean, when COVID hit, it was a small amount. I mean, relatively speaking. I had made a $10,000 investment in a new business thing I was about to do. Then COVID hit. That thing went out the window. And how much of that did I get back? Not a nickel. It was gone.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it back from anybody. I couldn't expect anyone to give it back to me or pay it back. A lot of the work had already been done too. So it's like, that money was used to do something, and a lot of the work had been done. So with integrity, I couldn't even ask or argue like, well, give it back. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I talk about losing thousands of dollars, that's a big one. You can say, well, it's only $10,000. That's a lot of money. But whether it's 50 grand, 60 grand. It's the numbers are numbers, but it's like the big thing is what did you do about it? Did you try to blame somebody else? I didn't. Not to say I'm the shining example of, how you should be, but I had to eat that.
Yeah.
And I was fucking pissed.
Yeah.
And I hated it. And I'm so much more careful with investments now. Now, nobody saw that coming. That was like a natural disaster. Like,
Sure.
You didn't know the tornado was coming. It just did. And you were like in the worst spot at the wrong time. I can't expect anyone to come to my rescue for that. If someone wants to, I don't even know if I'd take it. It would really depend. Is my family out on the street starving? Like, okay. But that's different. But one thing that you had talked about, you think a lot of the younger generation has been taken advantage of. I agree with that. And I don't just blame the government, though. Like, they have their blame for sure. But, we grew up in a time, and even still, it's being pushed that if you're in high school, if you want to make money and be successful, make good money, you have to go to college.
Yeah.
And that used to be the case.
Yeah.
That used to be, in large part, the case. Now, there are barriers to entry in corporate America sometimes, based on whether or not you have any degree, whether it's in music theory or gender studies, or I'm not generalizing useless degrees, but I just think I'm a business guy, so I'm thinking like, when I think of, if I were to go get a degree, I'm thinking, what's going to be marketable that will make me money when I graduate? Like, what makes money in the marketplace? If you have a degree in music, wonderful. I love music. I started writing music, songs and everything. I went to Nashville recently. That's great. It's just in the marketplace, they don't tend to make a lot of money. And so, if you spent 80 or 100K on a degree like that, it's not that it's worthless or you didn't learn a lot or it wasn't good in some way. I'm talking financially speaking. There's really not a market that's going to allow you to make it back because you have that degree.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee.
And nothing is.
Yeah, it's like, in that sense, college is like an investment where nothing's guaranteed. Like your investment before COVID, that wasn't guaranteed. Any investment I've ever made.
It definitely wasn't guaranteed.
There's no guarantees. I'm still, they're doing fine now, but that could change later today.
Yeah.
And so going to college could be looked at to the point I think you're making is it can be looked at as an investment. I'm going to position myself with the correct education in either discipline that is going to demand a lot of money in the market, or maybe it's something I'm passionate about as music, where that's taking maybe a little bit bigger risk because I don't know what the actual numbers are, but it's probably like 2% of the people with music degrees get incredibly wealthy, and the other 98% become are working a job that's not related at all.
Look, and the reason they don't make a lot of money in general, very broadly, generally speaking, I mean, you get paid in proportion to the level of problems you solve. If you solve big problems and not a lot of people can do it, you're going to make a boatload of money. Mm. If there's 10,000 people with, let's say, a music degree, well, what jobs out there are solving such a problem that music degree holding individuals are being paid top dollar for teaching music or something music related? And you would really have to find a place in the marketplace where you're solving a big enough problem and not just everyone can do it. That's where your income goes up. If you're a janitor, nothing wrong with that. But anybody can clean shit up. Mm-hmm. Anybody can do that. Like, there's more people that can do that. Now, if you're talking, let's say there's a business, and you have one person in the whole company who's a great communicator. They're confident. They're good at communicating. They're outspoken. They represent your company well. And everyone else is like, I am not getting on that stage. Or I am not doing... Okay, well, that person deserves more money. Because that speech they give, maybe they get a $5,000 bonus or something. That speech they give could bring in another $100,000 or $1 million in business to that company.
Sure.
So they're now more valuable market-wise, financially speaking, to that company, and you get
Yeah.
paid in proportion to the value you bring to the marketplace. Just getting a degree doesn't make you valuable. And, I mean, it says, oh, you completed something. But people I hire out to different things for my business. I usually don't care if they have a degree unless it's something, it's pretty rare, unless it's something that requires a degree. But if there's an amazing video guy, and I'm doing like a new online course, and there's a great video guy. He's like, man, I didn't go to college, but I watched his demo reels, his highlight reels.
Yeah.
This guy is unreal. Like, dude, like, you got it, man. Like, it's okay. Like, I don't care about where you went to college, what your GPA. Can you get me the result I want? Can you make my video look that badass as you did all these others?
Right.
And he's like, yeah. And so now, but he's charging top dollar, and I'm paying it because I don't want the lesser quality. I want the top quality.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter where he grew up, or and he might have just played with it, learned on YouTube, bought a camera, like there's a Canon camera sitting right here, and learned it and put it together and started going, hey, I'm in the film business. Like, hey, I produce videos for companies, and no one knows any better. He's just really good, and he just created this moneymaker out of nowhere.
Yeah, man. I mean, I am a huge advocate for the idea that college education, although it is valuable and it can be valuable, isn't the barrier. For example, the last job that I had a boss before I became my own boss. The position I held, one of the requirements was a master's degree. You had to have a master's degree. Well, my highest level of education is 8th grade. I dropped out of high school in 9th grade. And so I definitely don't have Now, I did do a little college after I got out of the Army, but
didn't have a master's degree.
Very little college after I got out of the Army. So
yeah, not even a bachelor's.
Yeah, not even a bachelor's. Yeah, a master's degree. And I was a sales manager at the time. I probably had, let's say, 30 peers, 30 other sales managers that were in the same role, most of them with master's degrees. And I was the top performer every year for 5 years in a row. 8th grade education. So
meaning you made more money for the company than all of them because you're the top performer.
Yeah.
So you brought in bigger numbers than all of them.
Yeah, my team was generating more revenue than any of the other 30 teams for 5 years in a row. And now I got into that role. I worked my way into that role. I wasn't just hired onto that company to get into that role. I started at the bottom. I did well, got promoted, did well, got promoted. And so that's how I sort of surpassed that requirement of a master's degree.
Well,
but if they would have said, no, I'm sorry, you don't qualify, you don't have a master's degree, they would have missed out on all that revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, like, you proved your value, and they saw it's kind of like there are rules until there's not. It's like, yeah, you have to have a master's degree, but this guy's bringing in more than everybody. Like, we think he'd be really good. Like, look at his track record in this other role. Let's try him in this role. Let's just see. They'll make exceptions if you prove yourself.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're bringing in more value to the company. But and someone can go, oh, well, he doesn't have a master's degree. It's like, yeah, but he's bringing in twice the revenue, or 10 to 15% more revenue than every other person in his same position. Like, in the end of the day, it's money. It's about money. It's about revenue, period.
And also, like...
So you increased your value to the company where they didn't care about their own requirements.
Exactly. And I think that's a huge argument. It's one of the reasons that I feel like I hate the term conventional wisdom.
It's usually not that wise, is it?
Conventional wisdom, yeah. It's like... you're basically saying this is the way we've always done it. So
this is what people always say.
Why do we do it this way? Because it's the way we've always done it.
You know what they say...
Yeah. So, like,
they are.
in that example, like, and I don't know this is true, but this is a theory, right? Maybe one of the reasons that I was able to outperform those with master's degrees is because I wasn't exposed to all that conventional wisdom. Or
contaminated by it, so to speak.
Yeah.
In a way.
I was drawing off of other sources of wisdom, other sources of information, maybe life experience and those kind of things. I mean, obviously there's a lot of hard work involved as well, but that's one example. Like anything where when somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, this is the way you do that." Like this is the way. This is like the way. This is what works.
It's the way we've always done it.
Yeah, I don't want to know. Like I'm already like, ah, man, I wish you hadn't told me that.
Yeah.
Because I want to. I'm a huge and I'm wrong all the time. I'm wrong all the time, but so is everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I like to draw from my gut, like what makes the most sense to me, and I'm right a lot of times too, and it's served me well. So, yeah.
Well, and a lot of people go along with how it's always done, and they're afraid to question it because they don't want to risk anything, and so they ignore their gut, like you don't, but they ignore their gut because they want to be compliant. And then someone comes along who trusts their gut and has the guts to do it, no pun intended, and suddenly it's like, oh, they're a top performer. Well, they did it different.
Mm-hmm.
And the person's like, well, I was just trying to do what I was supposed to do the way I was supposed to. But the way it's always been done only produces the types of results you've always had. And so unless you mix it up, but you see, the bottom line is, like, if you're one of these people stuck in debt, with student loan debt, say, or any debt, if you want to make more money, the key is being of more value in the marketplace.
That's right.
Period. People pay money for value, and that comes in the form of solving a problem. And that's all there is to it. And if you solve a problem when I got out of the military, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was kind of on the speaking path because I got kind of mentored into that. I was very fortunate. But he didn't, like, give me money. He didn't just, he never, and I thank God he was smart enough he wouldn't do that. I never would have asked him for it, ever. But there are a few times a year. Here's an example. I'm a military veteran, and I'm willing to get up and talk in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
It started out that there's 4 or 5 times a year that organizations, community organizations, or churches, they'd say, hey, we're looking for a guest speaker for Veterans Day. That's valuable to them. Why? They want the whole community to come out to their church or their event because, well, just the community aspect, but financially speaking, let's not ignore that. You get more people in your doors. Well, if this guy, Brian, can be a draw that attracts maybe the veteran community or people who are family of military or veteran, and in North Texas, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
If it gets another 200 people in their door, there's probably going to be a handful of those people who come back, let's say, for example, to that church, and who end up giving money to that church. And it's like any business, but it's like, if I say, well, my fee is, well, back then, like $2,500 or $5,000, well, they might say, well, that's a lot of money. Well, it's relative, number one. But number two, if you end up getting, 10 to 15 or 30 more people that got exposed to your, let's say, church, I'll just use a hypothetical example, and they end up giving money, and you don't know how wealthy some of these people are. There might be a multimillionaire, even a billionaire that you didn't realize showed up because you didn't know. Mm-hmm. How much was it? How valuable was it to bring me in to the lifetime value? Like, let's say I got paid $5,000 to go give a keynote for 45 to 60 minutes. How much, was that a good investment to pay me $5,000 plus expenses to come and speak? And it brought 30 more people, and maybe 8 or 10 of them became faithful giving members of your church. And every year that equates to, I don't know, $20, $40, $60, $80,000. Mm-hmm. Was that a good investment? I was solving a problem. When I realized that too, out of the Army, when I realized that, I started doing it. I could call any place and just, back then it was churches. And it was I would just call and say, hey, do you have any speakers for Veterans Day? And they'd be like, oh, no, actually we don't. I said, would you like to get more community members into your door by having a military speaker? Because people love the military, and they love to show up to a place with them and their families and friends. And it could actually get your church a lot of exposure, I think, locally, that you wouldn't normally have if you had a guest speaker and you could promote that event. I was selling the whole thing. I was painting the picture. And, I've never done that and not gotten booked, unless it was a scheduling issue or some little logistic.
Sure.
But I was talking to them from the position of where I know they are. They want more people. They want more money. Every organization does, and every church does. You know, they want more people there, more influence, more money, more, so they can have more opportunities, and they can grow. Well, I talk to them about me and what I do from the position of solving that problem or one of those problems for them, and I show them how I'm the answer, the solution to that.
Yeah.
Now people are interested. I don't even have to sell myself. I just talk, hey, I was just thinking, and had this idea, and I thought, I know what to say because I'm talking from a position of their problem they want solved. Anybody can do this. Anybody. Find a problem, and imagine you're in that position. Well, what are the big problems? What is it you want? Well, start saying those things to the people in that position and start offering value in exchange for money.
Yeah, that's the old Dale Carnegie wisdom, like in sales. Yeah, it's like, you want to try to view. It's the point that I think you were making is like you want to talk to them. You want to try to view things from their eyes. What are they concerned with? What are their problems? So when you approach any sale, which is what I consider that, like when you're talking to people about getting booked, it's a
totally.
sale. You're selling them.
I'm selling myself.
Your services.
Yeah.
When you approach any sale, those that approach it from the motivation standpoint of, I need to make a sale so I can make a commission, that gets translated, and that's when people put up big walls. Like, oh, it's another salesperson. He's trying to make some money off of me. But if you look at it, if you talk to them on their terms, and it's like, hey, let's talk about what you need. Let's talk about what your problems are, and then let's see if I can solve some of them. Mm-hmm. And if I can, then you'll obviously pay for my services. And so I think that's the point you were making. But another thing I want to get back to that supports something that you said is about the amount of money you make is directly correlated with the amount of value that you provide, right?
Yep. Period.
I think there's no better example than there's a big, I don't know if it's big, but I've seen this I've seen this discussion being had on the WNBA and the NBA. Why does the WNBA, why are they only making, I don't know how much they're making. Let's say it's $100,000 a year.
It's called demand.
Yeah, a player is making top players making $100,000 a year. It might be more than that. I don't know. But then you got LeBron James and all of them making millions a year. And I've seen the argument. It's like, that's sexist or whatever.
They don't
why
understand
are the men getting,
how it works.
Yeah, why are the men getting paid more than the women? And exactly, they don't understand how it works because it's supply and demand. That's very simple. We're like, if we stop and look at where does the money for these salaries come from? Mm-hmm. It comes from ticket sales, and it's a direct correlation with how many people are buying tickets, how many people are watching the games on TV,
buying memorabilia,
all that stuff. Yeah, and that's what creates the salaries. So, yeah.
All right, so we're talking about the WNBA here. Had another technical difficulty, but we fixed it.
I think maybe we're too sexy for this camera.
Probably.
A different one.
Taking up a lot of space on this computer. So yeah, the whole WNBA thing, nobody wants to say it this way, but it's true. Compared to the NBA, fewer people want to pay money to watch it, or they're just not that interested. And that's the same thing with the college degree, though. If you go and you get an expensive degree where nobody, being companies, nobody wants to pay for that skill set that you learned in the marketplace, or they're not paying a lot of money for it, and then you take on that huge amount of debt, you're obviously going to have a way harder time paying it off because it's just not that in demand.
Right.
And so it doesn't mean you're bad, but the problem is in high schools, I've never known any school to teach high schoolers to ask this question. What is in demand right now in the marketplace? What's making money and what will be making money in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
But like predictably the best you can do. I don't care what you want to do with your life. If you want to do something that you're passionate about, but it doesn't make a lot of money, go for it. You might incur debt that you have a hard time paying off, though, because nobody's really paying that much money for that. Whereas if you're a software engineer, you might be making, 40 or 50 grand more a year starting off or something, for example, which, okay, maybe you don't like being a software engineer. You don't want to be that. Okay, you don't have to, but you're not going to make the money either.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's an excellent point because at the end of the day, that's why there's a perceived need for student loan forgiveness or student loan debt, right? Like there's obviously a group of people a group of the population, I think it was close to 50 million when they announced it yesterday that was going to be affected by this. There's a group of people that are complaining that they can't afford to make these loans, and they may very well have a legitimate complaint.
Sure.
But the thing about it is they wouldn't be complaining about it if the promises that they were made or the misconceptions that they had when they took out that loan,
the conditioning that they were given,
yeah,
like, oh yeah, you'll make $100,000 with this degree.
Yeah.
So you're like, whatever, I'll pay it off in 5. When I get out, right? I'll just figure that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
It's not a very good strategy, but yeah.
Yeah, the whole idea behind it is like, I'm taking out this loan because I'm gonna be making a lot more money later, and I'm gonna be able to afford to pay off this loan, and that's the key. That's the key terms right there. Is I'm going to be able to afford to pay this loan. Well, it turns out you weren't. It turns out you weren't. So something went wrong.
Cost of housing went up. Cost of food went up. Cost of gas went up. The year or two after you got out of college. Oh, you got married, by the way. Oh, you got pregnant. Had a kid or two. Didn't plan on that either.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't just go away. Now you have all these other things, but nobody teaches young people to plan this out and go, where are you going to be? What are you going to possibly be making with this degree? Legitimately. Mm-hmm. Where are you going to be in life? Are you going to be ready to like pop out some kids or get married? And what that's going to entail?
Yeah.
What if you're the sole income? Oh, well, I have 2 incomes. Well, depending on who you marry, if you marry another business professional who's doing good or maybe as good as you, or if you marry someone who's they're a great house spouse or whatever, like they're raising your kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really important, but it doesn't pay money.
Yeah.
And so nobody teaches them to think this way.
Yeah, and that's true. And on the terms of teaching people, like the whole idea is if we do have a problem and people cannot afford these payments, what is forgiving those payments teaching them? They already, got themselves into trouble once.
Yeah.
And so what is preventing them from getting themselves into trouble again if it's just like, oh, hey, you know what? We know you messed up. Don't worry about it. You don't know that anymore. There's nothing keeping them from doing the same thing again.
Well, because they think there's going to be someone there for them, and there's not always going to be, regardless of the circumstance. Not only that, but you're encouraging a lack of integrity, literally lying. Hey, yes, I will pay this money back, and now I'm not paying this money back. You're literally a liar.
Yeah.
In the truest definition of it. And that's not to vilify you. I understand you might be in a hard time. But you can't say you're going to pay something back and not pay it back and not call yourself a liar. You are a liar.
Right.
You lied. Yeah. You said you're going to... I mean, if I take a credit card, I'll say, yeah, throw $10,000 on it. Yes, Visa, I will pay this back. And I don't, I'm a liar.
That's right. And
and you don't want that. You don't want to think of yourself that way. I mean, this has deeper implications beyond the money. Because you know you didn't do it.
Yeah, you signed your name, you promised to do something, and now you're not going to do it. And, the counter argument to that could be, some people could say, well, yeah, but I was lied too. The school lied to me about how much, how much what the job market looked like in this field. The government lied to me about the terms of the loans and everything. Yeah, that could all be true. That's could all be true. But if I get misled on a real estate deal, or you get misled, somebody tells you, hey, show up at this time on this day, come speak, we're gonna pay you $10,000, and then you show up and you do it, and they don't pay you the $10,000, you got lied to. But
that's happened a couple times.
You're not gonna phone President Biden and go, hey, this church just lied to me.
The last person I go to is a politician.
And, give me $10,000. Yeah, especially if it's the politicians that created the problem. So
yeah.
Take responsibility for your actions. You got screwed over. Some of you didn't and can't afford it and just aren't good at managing money.
Well, your parents and teachers also told you that was the only way to succeed was to go to college, and we now know that's a lie.
Yeah.
And so that is a big problem, admittedly.